Act 1. The Incident. On March 24, 2008, Iowa City Police entered a quiet suburban home on Barrington Road and stepped into a nightmare. The mother lay lifeless in the master bedroom, her skull shattered. Downstairs in the children's playroom, a toddler's tiny body was discovered, brutally beaten. Upstairs, 3 more young victims, each struck with fatal force. No signs of a break-in, no signs of a struggle. Just silence and blood. The house belonged to Steven and Cheryl Sueppel, a devout, respected couple known in their community for their warmth, faith, and selfless commitment to their 4 adopted children. But now, all 6 members of the household were dead. The only clue, a burned-out minivan on Interstate 80. Inside, the body of a man incinerated beyond recognition. Dental records would later confirm what everyone feared. It was Steven, and he didn't run from justice. He obliterated his family first. Act 2. Timeline of discovery. The horror unraveled in pieces. At 6:31 a.m., a 911 call came in from a man with a flat voice and cold precision. He told the dispatcher to send officers to 629 Barrington Road, his own home. He didn't explain why. When police arrived minutes later, they found the door unlocked. The smell of blood hit them first, then the silence. No one alive. Cheryl, 42, was found beaten to death in bed. The children, Ethan, 10, Seth, 8, Mira, 5, and Eleanor, 3, had been murdered with a baseball bat. Blunt force trauma, no restraints, no signs of resistance, as if they never saw it coming. That same morning, a tan Toyota Sienna exploded into flames on the interstate after smashing into a concrete pillar. The driver made no attempt to brake. He died on impact. The fire was so intense, identifying the body took hours, but investigators had a strong suspicion, especially after they found a 4-page handwritten confession on the Sueppel kitchen table. Act 3. The victims and their life. The Sueppels seemed like a model family. Steven was a former VP at Hills Bank and Trust, and Cheryl had been a passionate elementary school teacher. Together, they adopted 4 children from South Korea, a journey they spoke of proudly, showing friends photos and planning every arrival with care. Ethan, the eldest, was brilliant beyond his years. He loved the cello, soccer, and fishing with his dad. Seth was quiet but curious, always drawn to nature and animals. Mira lit up every room with her magic tricks and giggles. And little Eleanor, just 3 years old, always clinging to her father's side. Cheryl gave up her teaching job to raise them, pouring herself into motherhood and community work. She ran a local book club, volunteered at the Iowa Children's Museum. The couple were deeply religious, rarely missing a weekend mass. They weren't rich, but they were stable, secure. Act 4. Crime scene breakdown. The scene inside 629 Barrington Road told a story too horrific for words. There were no overturned chairs, no broken windows. No one had fought back. Cheryl, the mother, was found in bed, still in her nightclothes, her face caved in by blunt force trauma. Her death likely came first. Downstairs, 3-year-old Eleanor was discovered in the playroom, her small body battered with the same violence. Upstairs, the 3 older children, Ethan, Seth, and Mira, were each found dead in their beds. They had been beaten as they slept, their wounds nearly identical. The weapon? A baseball bat. Near the kitchen table, police found a handwritten note, 4 pages long. It was addressed to family. Steven Sueppel had confessed in chilling detail. He tried first to end their lives with carbon monoxide poisoning by running the family van in the garage, but it didn't work. So he brought them back inside and finished the job by hand. Then he drove to Interstate 80, crashed the van into a concrete pillar, and burned with it. Act 5. Suspicion and lies. The tragedy hadn't come from nowhere. In the months leading up to the murders, Steven Sueppel had been unraveling. A respected banker and father, yes, but also a thief. Hills Bank and Trust had quietly fired him in late 2007 after discovering he'd embezzled over $550,000 across 7 years. Sueppel claimed the money was to support a drug and gambling addiction, but there was no evidence of either. No lavish spending, no secret trips to Vegas. The family lived modestly, so where did the money go? Some say he was simply saving it. Others believe the stress of maintaining a perfect family image cracked his mind. Either way, Steven was arrested, charged with embezzlement and money laundering, and released on a $250,000 bond. His trial was set for April 2008. If convicted, he faced up to 30 years in prison. Still, to outsiders, nothing seemed off. Cheryl remained strong, returning to work, staying optimistic. The children went to school. They even attended Easter Mass on March 23, the same day they would all be murdered that night. Act 6, the turning point. What pushed Steven Sueppel to the edge? That Sunday, everything appeared normal. Friends and family gathered for Easter Mass. No signs of tension, no cries for help. Even when a family friend stopped by the house later, nothing seemed amiss. But behind the composed exterior, Steven had made a decision. At 11:30 p.m., he left his first message. "My family is in heaven." It was sent to his former law firm's answering machine. Then between midnight and 4 a.m., he made a series of eerie, emotionless calls to various places, including his home answering machine, narrating the aftermath. He tried to drown himself in the river, but just floated. Eventually, he called 911 and told them to go to his house, without saying why. At 6:36 a.m., he accelerated his minivan into a concrete pillar and burned to death inside. The autopsy confirmed what the wreckage suggested. The crash was deliberate. Sueppel wanted no survival, no redemption, only total erasure. He didn't just kill his family, he wanted to vanish with them. Act 7. Psychology and motive. What drives a man to slaughter the very family he built? Psychologists have a name for it: family annihilator. The term describes a person, usually a man, who murders their entire family, often followed by suicide. The motivations vary: shame, loss of control, financial ruin. But the profile is eerily consistent. A middle-aged male, seen by outsiders as a provider, a leader, a man who feels he's failing in silence. Steven Sueppel fit this mold with surgical precision. To his church, he was a devout Catholic. To his neighbors, a loving husband. To his colleagues, a banker with a rising career. But when his embezzlement was exposed, that image shattered. He wasn't just losing his job. He was losing control over the life he had curated for 2 decades. The shame was unbearable. But what makes this case more chilling is what didn't happen. There were no reports of domestic violence, no signs of mental illness. No one saw it coming, not even his wife, Cheryl, who still spoke of him lovingly to friends. Even in his suicide note, Steven never expressed rage or hatred. Instead, he justified the murders with twisted logic. He couldn't bear to leave his family behind to suffer alone. He claimed he was sparing them from financial ruin, from being raised without a father. He believed in his final hours that killing them was an act of protection. That kind of thinking isn't just delusional. It's terrifying. It reveals a mind that sees death as a form of mercy and a father's failure as reason for annihilation. Act 8. Aftermath and emotional echo. The city of Iowa City was left paralyzed by the weight of this tragedy. Not just by the crime, but by the sheer normalcy of the family involved. They weren't dysfunctional, they were ideal. The kind of family you'd want to live next to. Cheryl, the mother, had recently rejoined the workforce. She was resilient, hopeful, still believing her husband could rebuild their lives. She didn't see what was coming, and neither did anyone else. The funeral was held quietly, as grief gripped the community like a vice. All 6 were buried together, side by side. Cheryl's father, despite the horror, described Steven as a son and said they loved him. That forgiveness haunts people to this day. March 24th, the day after the murders, would have been Mira's 6th birthday. Instead of cake, there were coffins. In South Korea, where the 4 children had been adopted from, the agencies expressed devastation. These children had already been orphaned once, and now, for the second time, they were taken from life itself. Today, this case is remembered not just for the brutality, but for its silence. For the lack of warning, for the terrifying reminder that sometimes the most monstrous acts come from people who look just like us. Steven Sueppel didn't snap in a fit of rage. He calculated. He left notes. He left voicemails. He left wreckage that could never be undone. What kind of person looks at their children and sees no future, only a burden? Was this the act of a broken man? Or a coward hiding behind a mask of protection? One thing is certain. The Sueppel murders weren't just a crime. They were a message. Even the perfect family can hide something deadly.